72% of employees say they trust a stranger more than their own manager. That isn't a flaw in the system, that is the system. Somewhere along the way, we mistook charisma for character. We confused loudness with vision. We rewarded those who took more, not those who stayed longer, and so we learned to follow the ones who ate first. The ones who sat closest to power, the ones who mastered the performance of leadership but ran when it came time to serve. They took the biggest slice. They spoke first in the room. They stood on stages built by people. They never stayed behind to help. And we followed them. Because no one else stood up. Because survival teaches silence. Because we forgot what leadership once meant. But maybe you're starting to remember. Maybe you felt the quiet betrayal of being led by someone who only shows up when it benefits them. Maybe you've given your best to someone who never even saw you, and maybe that's why you're here. Because beneath the noise, beneath the slogans, you still believe there's another kind of leader. One who doesn't demand loyalty but earns it, not by rising to the top, but by standing at the bottom. A leader who watches the table. And wait, a leader who chooses to eat last. Not for applause, not for optics, but because they made sure everyone else was fed. That kind of leadership doesn't shout, it doesn't need to, it moves quietly, like gravity, holding everything in place. You may not remember their name, but you remember the feeling of safety when they stood beside you. That's how you know it was real, and maybe, just maybe, that leader, he is already in you. In the Marine Corps, there's a code of conduct that's never written down. Officers eat last. It's not about seniority. It's about sacrifice. Because leadership isn't earned through achievement, it's proven through restraint. Simon Sinek called it the circle of safety, the invisible barrier a leader builds so their team can breathe, speak, try, fail, and grow without fear. And there's a reason it works. The body keeps score. When we are safe, truly safe, the brain floods with oxytocin, connection, trust, loyalty, the invisible glue that tells us we belong. Dopamine rewards progress. Serotonin rises when we feel respected, but cortisol, the stress hormone, rises when we feel excluded, judged, or abandoned. That's why bad leaders damage more than performance. They alter biology. They wire their teams for fear and call it efficiency. But a true leader, they lower cortisol in a room just by walking in, because they aren't there to dominate, they're there to protect. And here's the paradox: the more you give, the less credit you'll receive. The longer you wait, the more invisible you become. The better you lead, the less they think they need you. And that's the point. The greatest leaders don't create dependence, they create safety. And in that safety, people rise. That's why they eat last. Because leadership, real leadership, is not about getting your share. It's about making sure there is a share. And if there isn't, you go hungry so someone else doesn't have to. That's not weakness, that's legacy. And the body remembers it, even if the world forgets your name. There's a story few people know. It comes from an ancient Buddhist text, a tale older than empires, but still more human than headlines. A young prince named Sattva was walking through the forest when he came upon a starving tigress and her cubs. Her body was skeletal, her breath faint. Her eyes wild with hunger. She was too weak to hunt, too close to devour her own young. The prince knelt down. He had no food, no weapon, no plan, so he gave her the only thing he had. His body. He laid himself before the tigress and said nothing. And in the silence she lived, and so did her cubs. He died, but his death echoed, because he chose to lead, not through command, but through offering. Not through glory, but through surrender. And long after his name faded, his act remained. We think leadership is strategy, charisma, authority. But sometimes it's none of that. Sometimes leadership is laying yourself down so something greater can rise. A team, a mission, a generation. It doesn't always look noble. It doesn't always get remembered. It often gets misunderstood, even resented. But that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it rare. There's a cost to eating last. You miss the praise. You carry the weight. You burn more quietly, and you get thanked less loudly. But those who eat last live in the hearts of others long after the noise dies down. And here's the contradiction we never talk about. You will lead best when you're not trying to lead. You'll be followed most when you've stopped asking to be seen. Because the ones who stay when things fall apart, they aren't chosen because of their speeches. They're chosen because when everyone else ran, they remained. And they didn't raise their hand, they bent their back. They didn't protect their reputation, they protected the people. That's not the leadership we're taught, but it's the leadership we remember. You've seen them, not in history books, not on stage, but in your own life. In the margins, the quiet one who stayed after the shift was over. The parent who served you the last bite and said they weren't hungry. The coach who never raised their voice but showed up every day. The friend who said nothing when you took more and gave anyway. You didn't call them leaders at the time. You might not have noticed them at all. But something about their presence made you feel safe. And now, looking back, you realize they carried more than anyone else. And asked for nothing in return. This is the leadership we forget, not because it was weak, but because it never demanded to be seen. You want a paradox? The people who shape us most are often the ones we remember least. Because when they were needed, they disappeared into the role, into the responsibility, into the fire. So here's the uncomfortable truth. You may have already been led by someone who gave up everything for you, and you never thanked them. But if you close your eyes, you'll feel them. The teacher who believed in you when no one else did. The sibling who shielded you from the storm. The partner who stood by you through the silence they ate last. And you didn't even know it. That's the weight of real leadership, not applause, not recognition. Legacy, because their gift wasn't for themselves, it was for you, to walk farther, to rise higher, to feel less alone. And now the question echoes back. Who are you willing to become that for? You won't be celebrated for this, you won't trend. You won't go viral for being the one who ate last, but someone will remember, not what you did, but how they felt when you did it. Because legacy isn't carved in stone, it's carved in people. The ones who sat at the table because you stood. The ones who spoke because you listened. The ones who dared because you made the fear just quiet enough to step through. This isn't the kind of leadership they teach. This is the kind they write about when it's too late to say thank you. Simon Sinek said it best, the cost of leadership is self-interest. And most aren't willing to pay it, but maybe you are. Maybe you already have. Maybe you've already stayed behind while others left. Covered for someone without saying a word. Let someone else win, even though you could have taken it for yourself. You didn't do it for glory. You did it because something deeper inside you knows real power is not what you keep. It's what you carry and pass on, and yes, it's heavy. But the greatest paradox is this: the ones who carry the most often walk alone. But they leave a path behind that everyone else can walk more freely. So if they never thank you, if they never see it, if they never know what it cost, let that be your proof. Because that's when you know you led, you ate last. In the end, they won't remember your resume. They'll remember how safe they felt around you. How seen, how steady. And maybe that's the most sacred role a leader can play. Not the one who finishes first, but the one who clears the way. Because the one who eats last is not weak. They are the first to rise, the first to hold the weight, the first to step into the fire when it starts to spread. They build the circle of safety that Simon Sinek spoke of. They walk behind others, just like Lao Tzu said, to lead people, walk behind them. And then one day they disappear quietly from the room. But the room is forever changed. Stronger, safer, fuller. Because of what they chose not to take. That's leadership. Not the kind that seeks the spotlight, but the kind that creates light. So here's the invitation: not to impress, but to protect, not to be followed, but to be trusted. If you've ever felt like no one saw your quiet sacrifices, this is your confirmation. They mattered. They made a difference. They made someone's world safer. And if you've never told them, the one who ate last so you could eat it all, tell them now. And if you are becoming that person for someone else, don't stop. Even if no one notices yet, because they will. One day when they sit at their own table, and they realize someone stood behind them, holding the storm back so they could taste peace. That's when they'll remember you. So tell us, who ate last so you could rise? Who do you lead now, not with words, but with your presence? Say their name, write it, pass it on. Because this isn't the end, it's the beginning of something truly rare: leadership. The kind that feeds others, the kind that waits, the kind that rises alone and first, because leaders eat last.